think things have to go through, not everything, but quite a lot of things have to go through a phase of sounding bad before they sound good. You know, they get to, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of maybe records coming out from the mid-90s, house records that sound a bit clunky and, you know, the drums sound a bit loud and whatever. Probably in another 10 years, they'll just sound old. They won't sound dated. Whereas things go through, I mean, disco in the early 80s, things like Musique, Push Push in the Bush, you had just a really loud kick drum and it sounded really fast, too fast. It didn't sound very good, but another 7 or 8 years later, it started to sound like a, you know, something you could play in a house set, and it's sounded relevant again. So I think things have to sound out of vogue for a bit to then start sounding back in. So yeah, things change, and some things are never going to sound good again, and some things, you know, maybe even sound better than they, you know, sound a bit ahead of their time. Some of the things which sound maybe dated to me is like maybe when you know, some of the keyboards came out which had maybe like an organ sound from the early 90s, and back then you thought, God, that sounds just like a real organ. Now it doesn't sound like a real organ. It sounds like a cheesy sort of like organ sound alike, and they're the sort of things that maybe date a record, but maybe in another 10 years it's just going to make, oh, it sounds a bit old and quirky.
What's like those early house pianos?
Yeah.
You know, people don't go now, that doesn't sound like a real piano, because it obviously doesn't sound like a real piano.
It's so not like a real piano. It kind of sounds okay now.
But people just go, oh, that sounds like an early house piano now.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's in a way that's fine. Once it sounds so old that it's just it's just old.
It is what it is.
I'm always doing different bits and pieces. There's always like a few things ongoing. So I had a compilation album out in a year called Locked in the Vinyl Cellar. So, you know, doing something like that, in theory you think, oh, that should only take me a week, but it always takes longer, and there's doing edits on the tracks and, you know, mixing it and whatever, and it gets quite involved. But in between doing things like that and a few other singles I've had out, I've been working on an Akaboo album, which is more, I suppose, electronic, deep, techie, I guess the words you could use about it, but it's also quite musical. So it's not like, I love Mr. Fingers, Larry Heard, or the Burrell Twins, or the Marshall Jefferson Deep House tracks. That's what I think of as deep house. And sometimes when I listen, and I still like some modern producers, I like people like Martin Buttrick or Jimster who are making deep house, but it's a lot more musical. There's a lot of deep house now, which to me it's just one chord repeated, and the arrangement doesn't do much. But I mean, that seems to be what's in vogue. So good luck to the people making it. But I'm trying to make something which is like kind of electronic, but still quite musical and maybe quite vocal. And it's not been easy, I have to say. It's a long slog, I guess, making an album, especially when you're the A&R man and the label and the artist. So I've got no label I can just take it in and sort of like say, oh, what do you think of this? And they might say, oh no, it sounds good, you know, and then you think, oh, maybe it is okay. You know, not that you'd always agree with them, and sometimes working with an A&R can be very, very annoying if you disagree with them, but sometimes it can be helpful in terms of moving you forward.
So how do you work? Do you use is it majority in digital, or do you utilize much analog equipment?
No, I still use analog equipment. I mean, I still use a desk, so I'm still mixing in a desk. I mean, I have mixed things inside the computer, but generally, because I've got a desk, I think use the desk. I've got a Jupiter and a Juno and but some outboard, quite a lot out. Things like Tube Tech, which is like a valve. Sort of like what sort of warms things up. It's kind of not really a compressor, but it's a good thing to bounce things through to kind of stop them sounding too digital. So quite often I'll put everything through the Tube Tech at least once, sometimes 2 or 3 times, just to give it a little bit more warmth. And then we've got things like viruses and which are more keyboards and other similar warming up things, and Lexicon Reverb. So because I've got all of those, and a lot of people haven't got them, I try and use them, especially for Sunburst Band, but for everything. I just think it's nice. You can't really hear that much difference if you put something through the Tube Tech and bounce it back in again. But if you do that to everything, you do it a couple of times, you can hear it. Does give it a bit of an analog warmth, which I like.
You're someone who has come from a very, very prosperous time in dance music in the 90s to the realities of what dance music is now, or what the music business in general is now. How do you feel about what are your attitudes to making a living in the dance music industry now?
I mean, it's obviously a lot tougher than it used to be, and it's a lot tougher for someone to break through and make a living.
How has it changed?
Well, I think there's lots of people maybe, who would have been, I mean, obviously remix fees were far, far higher in the 90s and late 80s. And also people, tracks were getting signed to majors a lot more. So, if you made a fairly big-ish dance record, there's a good chance there's a lot of, AM/PM, Polydor, loads of the majors had like 2 or 3 dance labels. So you had a good chance of your track getting released by a major who would maybe make a video, try and get it in the charts. That's just not happening anymore. You could make a pretty big track now and you'd be lucky to get it on a couple of compilation albums. So, the potential to actually, get that advance, and then also, the remix work you would have got out of, if you made a big track, there would have been, quite a lot of labels potentially looking for dance remixes of pop artists, or dance remixes of other dance records that they'd signed. There's just a lot less ways of making money out of making music. The main way of making money now, I suppose, is DJing. When I play out, I probably play quite a lot of old stuff, but not cliched old stuff. People want me to play a lot of my stuff, generally, and I don't actually probably play enough of it, sometimes because I'm sick of it. But people seem to want, the requests I get when I'm DJing are normally for my records, like Backfired or, Must Be the Music. That's what people come in. Or they ask for something like Robin S. That's the other one. Or something I really don't want to play. Not like, well, especially when it's normally like 6 months after it got in the charts. But, so I try, in my ideal set, which, I do get to play, I just really like to mix it up and play like a Carl Craig record and some deeper stuff, play some contemporary sort of disco-y, funky house. I don't mind playing the old commercial record as long as I like it.
Yeah,
and I like playing, I like to play some old disco records and some early house records and just anything. I really like it if there's some, like when Ben Westbeach So Good Today came out and that had the original mix, which is kind of like broken beat non-4/4. I'd like to play more non-4/4 records that sort of still have the energy to keep a dance floor. I think it's really nice to break things up with a mixture. I'm really not into a whole set of the same sort of music.